approaches to healing from eating disorders and what someone might be able to do right now if they're suffering. Today, our guest is Dr. Julie Brush, who's one of our own. I love that. She works for us at Amen Clinics. Dr. Brush grew up, unlike most of us, I think, eating farm fresh produce, bicycling in the flat countryside. She got her doctorate of neuropathic medicine from National University of Natural Medicine. So welcome, Dr. Brush.
Thank you so much. It's nice to be here.
Thank you. In your bio, it talks about this amazing childhood you have of being sort of wholesome and healthy, and most Americans have not experienced that. I know I certainly did not. I had a single working mother. She ran away from home at 16, didn't finish high school, really worked hard to change her destiny and mine, and she did a good job of doing that. But I was left alone all the time, and it was all the tiger, the leprechaun, the clown. It was just all my best friends that kept me company, and eating was just not something I learned how to do in a healthy way. Would you say that's common?
Oh, I think it's very common. Absolutely. And I think the standard American diet, unfortunately, is not a very healthy diet. So you could just be doing the standard thing that most people are doing and end up eating a very unhealthy diet that's predisposing you to cardiovascular disease and diabetes, and even things like depression and anxiety, because those can be heavily influenced by biochemistry, by the nutrients in our body. Absolutely.
Have you noticed a change in some of the disordered eating as a result of current events like COVID?
I have definitely noticed. You've probably seen the joke, the COVID-15. A lot of absolutely. So it's a lot of the stress of COVID-19 is starting to sort of have its long-term effects. Yeah. So we're seeing a lot more anxiety and depression among patients. We're seeing a lot more challenges with compulsive habits or addictive habits, and that can be drugs and alcohol. It can be disordered eating. So definitely people who already have diagnoses or experience with say it's binge-eating disorder, bulimia, or anorexia, can all be seeing worsening symptoms, worsening control of those things, as well as a lot of people who maybe don't have an eating disorder diagnosis, but they're really falling into unhealthy eating patterns, and it's affecting everything. Absolutely.
So are the strategies you're giving people now any different than what you would normally give them? Or is it the same strategies?
It's a good question. I think that I'm giving people a little more structure to the recommendations.
I like that.
Yeah, because what's happening is people don't have enough structure in their lives. A lot of their usual routine patterns, a lot of their maybe healthier coping strategies are harder to access. So maybe they had a pattern of getting up, eating a healthy breakfast, going to work, taking their lunch to work, coming home, having, that structure, that routine can help people get onto a healthy pattern and stay on that. And or they went to the gym on Monday, Wednesday, Friday morning, or their favorite yoga class was on Saturday morning and Wednesday evening. And those types of things can be really healthy patterns that help us stay healthy and fit. And a lot of those have disappeared. People can't go to the gym. People can't go to their yoga class.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even food choices might be limited. The shelves they're not as stocked as well. My favorite farmer's market for months was closed entirely. And that's where I was getting my fresh produce every Sunday. So then I had to find other places to get, fresh produce. And this kind of thing can really throw people off.
Yeah, we noticed that even in our own house. And waking up and staying in your pajamas all day is not a good thing. And I know a lot of parents are way more stressed because they're trying to work from home and they're trying to get their kids in school, and their kids, I don't have a space for myself anymore like I used to because the kids were gone all day. All of those things are stressors. I totally agree with you. So creating structure is probably critical.
Absolutely.
One question I have. So there's this myth that eating disorders are an adolescent issue. Have you seen that? Or what would you say is the truth behind patients you see? Do you think that it's, that adult patients have a harder time asking for help? Or is it just
a good question? I think that typically eating disorders emerge in adolescence.
Mhm.
That's where we start to see it the most. But it is absolutely not just an adolescent condition. We see it a lot in adults. My job right before I came to Amen Clinic was the medical director of an eating disorder and addiction residential treatment center.
Mm.
And we treated uh, people with eating disorders, adults, frequently.
Mm.
And it's certainly, in most cases, we found that it had its roots in adolescence, but it certainly didn't stop there. And I do think that there's a lot of shame in eating
Yeah.
disorders. And so that can stop people from reaching out for help, can stop people from being truthful when they're talking to their healthcare provider. And I do think it's really important when we're working with people to ask the questions that can be hard to answer, really ask more specific questions about body image, about food habits, about what they're eating. I almost always ask about cravings. I ask about what their stress management strategies are, because a lot of times the stress, anxiety, depression, that's what's fueling disordered eating.
Mm. Yeah, for sure. And do you notice that perfectionism is kind of a common trait with eating disorders?
I would say that eating disorders are largely thought of as an issue of control. So I do think that perfectionism and the need for control are very closely tied. So I think that there is an element there. I think that in a lot of cases, people are trying to hold themselves to an impossible standard.
Mm.
And I think you will probably agree with me if we start to talk about social media and Instagram and Facebook and the kind of expectations that young people are setting up for themselves, in particular with physical beauty.
Yeah.
And it's a really huge problem. And I struggled with some self-image issues when I was younger. And I feel like the influences that are out there now are way worse than they were when I was young.
Oh,
And it's really disturbing to me.
My daughter was showing me her social media. I mean, this started, she was like 13, and she's showing me these young girls that they don't look 13. I mean, they look like they're 18. And they have these perfect, looking physiques and makeup, and it started to make her feel really bad about herself. She's like, why are so many of the girls that I go to school with, why do they look like this? I go, honey, I promise you, not even supermodels look like supermodels. I want you to think about all the apps, okay? Just think about all the apps that are out there. When you actually meet these people, I want you to tell me if they actually look like that. Like, be honest. It's just part of the game of social media, and putting your pictures out there is you're doctoring them. It's just, no one wants to put real pictures out there, right? They want to doctor everything. And that just feeds the beast, I think. For these young girls, but it's not just young girls. I got to tell you, I mean, I did a ton of work on self-image over the years because it was a horrible thing for me. And I feel really good about all the tools I have now. And yet, over Christmas, I hate shopping. I hate going to the mall, so I do everything online. And I saw someone who I know that has a really big following, and I'm like, oh, I want to see what she's doing. And I clicked on it, and she's my age. And within 5 minutes, I felt terrible about myself. Because I'm like, what? She's my age. Why does she look like that? And I'm like, oh, this is so stupid. What are you doing? I caught myself because I've got the skill now.
It's so easy to get sucked in.
Yeah.
So easy to get sucked into that mindset, and I have a daughter who's 21. She's turned 21. And I remember watching her struggle to take the perfect picture to post.
Yeah.
And I remember saying, you're struggling. You're taking 100 pictures to get one that you feel is perfect enough. I want you to know that every single person is doing the same thing.
Yes.
And
these poor girls, but it's not just girls. I mean, guys have their own set of issues. They're different, but they have their own set of issues.
And eating disorders happen in guys. Absolutely.
I think most people don't really think about that. Don't you?
I think people think of it as more of a female or a female problem, but in reality, I have treated men with eating disorders. It absolutely happens. And I think it may be even harder for them to reach out for help.
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah,
I would think so because there's this big macho thing. I have to be strong and tough.
right. Yeah, they're subject to a lot of those same social media influences. They're subject to, looking at, the men on television and how you're supposed to look if you're fit and healthy, and again, setting themselves up to compare to an impossible standard.
Yes. Yeah, it's amazing. So what approaches have you seen to be the most helpful when you're working with patients with eating disorders? What are your favorite?
One thing that I'm really seeing is a lot of loneliness. And I think I like to tell people to physical distance, but not to social distance. I know social distance is the term we're using, but the reality is all the social distancing is making people feel lonely and sad and depressed. And the more that we get wrapped up in our own world and we lose perspective of others, the worse some of these problems can become. So I like to tell people, don't social distance. In that, stay connected to your friends, to your family, to your colleagues. Luckily, we do have the internet because we can do Zoom and we can do, FaceTime, and we can make phone calls. And I really encourage people to reach out and stay connected. One thing that another colleague shared with me that I really liked, when people are depressed or feeling anxious, it can be really immobilizing. It can be easy to sort of stay in bed all day or sit in front of the TV all day and do very little. And sometimes I will tell people, so divide your day into 3 parts: your morning, your afternoon, and your evening. And you set a goal for each part. Okay? You do something in each section of the day. Something that is active or productive. So that could be, I'm going to go for a walk for 30 minutes in the morning. I'm going to call my mother in the afternoon. I'm going to read, for half an hour, the book that's been sitting on my bedside table for the last month in the evening. So have something constructive for each part of the day that helps to keep the structure, and B, it keeps us more active. It keeps us feeling like we are accomplishing something, even if it's those little things. It makes a difference as opposed to just sitting all day in bed or on the couch or wherever you're lounging and not feeling like you're being productive. Those little things do matter.
A lot. Yeah. That's really important. So there's so many myths going around, I think, about eating disorders. And I feel like we could just do an entire show just around the myths around eating disorders. I'd love to ask you one question, and it might be, maybe the answer is too long for this. And if it is, we'll do another show another time. But there seems to be so many ideas, at least I know it's sort of an outdated idea, but I just wonder what your thoughts are. I know we tend to, you're functional medicine, you're a naturopath, so you're a functional medicine person, basically.
Yes.
So you tend to look at 4 circles like we do: biological, psychological, social, and spiritual. You're looking at the whole person. We're not looking we're looking for root causes.
Correct.
But I know when I was young and I struggled with an eating disorder in my teens, there was this idea that something bad's going on in your house, which quite frankly, it wasn't perfect. But it was like, why does everyone sort of look at your mom? And how much of it is associated with trauma, or is it more a lack of control? Or tell me about that part of it, that circle, the psychological circle, like trauma, parenting, that how much of it is real versus what we used to think? Is it an outdated concept?
So I think it's important to recognize that eating disorders have a cause. So they are not, they didn't appear out of nowhere. They appeared, like most things, they are a coping strategy, an unhealthy one. So in any good treatment program for eating disorders, we have to get to that root cause. We have to address whether it's trauma, whether it's depression, anxiety, and where that comes from. Without addressing that side of it, you will constantly be battling, right? So the program that I was a medical director of in Hawaii did a very good job. It was a very trauma-focused program.
Okay.
And we got a lot of people there who failed in other programs. And I think part of that failure was the focus on control. So, and I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about the different approaches, but a lot of what I felt worked in the program where I was is we said, okay, you're not going to hide. We're going to be here with you. If you're going to binge eat, we're going to be here with you. We want you to be open about your process, about your thoughts, about what's going on with you. And we're not going to get in the way of you doing what you're going to do. We're going to be here for you. We're going to talk about it. So remove the guilt, remove the hiding, and say, here's what's happening. Let's talk about what's happening. And let's talk about where your emotions are. What's your trigger? And I really feel like that sort of deep therapy was really effective.
That's interesting. Yeah, no, and it's what you're saying, like almost everything you're saying is resonating with me. I know as a teenager, my life felt out of control. It just felt like everything was out of control. And I just one day found myself over a toilet bowl and I went, okay, this is weird. It's gross, but it's a relief. Yeah. And I don't even, I know it's different for everybody. It's not like I needed to go binge on a whole bunch of stuff. It's just that there was something about that just there was a relief to it, and I can't even explain it. There was no way to explain it. So it's really interesting that you brought that up, that control factor. And I don't know how many other people go through this. I would assume it's a lot. I thought I was special because I figured out how to stop it, because I got freaked out when my mom made me go to a clinic, and I'm like, I am not doing this. Like, this is not, you're not labeling me with this. I'm not doing this. I'm fine. Fouled up, insecure, neurotic, and emotional, but I'm fine. I'm not doing this. So I started exercising like crazy. When I figured out exercise gave me that same sense of relief, I was able to stop purging. But I was still purging, really. And I think that confuses people. What do you say about that?
So I think it is, you hit the nail on the head. It's a coping strategy, right? Mm-hmm. You found one that was less harmful to you.
Right.
But we also know that over-exercising can be a component of eating disorders.
And I was over-exercising. I mean, yeah. If I had a fever, I was going to go sweat it out. If I was sick, I was going anyways. If I was hurt, I would figure out what to do around the hurt. It's like, oh, I just won't work that limb today. But I was going no matter what. Right.
So it was, so the over-exercising can also be an unhealthy coping strategy. I think it's important to look at balance, right? Mm-hmm. Is what I'm doing in balance, or is it causing harm?
Well, and what's the motivation behind it? I know for me, it was like, the motivation was I just knew I needed to do it or I was going to lose it, versus I wasn't doing it so much for my health. Right. So it was a big difference. I mean, I'd go 2 hours a day, no matter what, rain, shine, come hell or high water, even if I needed to rest. Yeah. And so now it's like I exercise because it makes me feel good and it's good for my health. And I do about 45 minutes to an hour, and I take a day off when I need to. It's a totally different.
Awesome. Sounds like a much more balanced approach.
It took a lot to get there, but
yes.
But I didn't understand that you could purge other ways.
Absolutely. And people do. And it's a matter of looking at, is this a balanced behavior or is this actually doing harm? And then getting to the root cause. I really think that deep therapy needs to be a part of addressing any eating disorder. And, the nice thing about now is most counselors, most psychotherapists, they're available by telemedicine.
Yes.
Which is another thing I'm really telling people. If you don't have somebody who's doing telemedicine, or if you don't have a good therapeutic relationship with somebody, find that. It's really important right now. You've got to have that support. And what a great time to do some deep work via telemedicine, because, everybody's set up for it now. Everybody's willing to engage. Most insurance companies are paying for that. It's a good time to really take care of our mental health in all the ways that are available to us.
No, I love that. And so one of the reasons I wanted to have you on, and I think we might need to have you on again, because I think this is a deeper topic. I just think it's a big topic.
Yeah.
But, in my new book, The Relentless Courage of a Scared Child, I actually sort of write about this journey. And it's funny, I've done so much work over so much time, and I feel strong and fine and healthy now. It's for a long time, but it was a lot. It was a big journey getting there, and and I didn't even realize how often, because I felt like I had things under control throughout my life, where it's like, oh, I was using some weird mechanisms for control though. So I write about that journey. And so it's one of the reasons I wanted to have you here. So, I mean, we should probably do another show at another time when we can talk about like, what are some, I mean, I know it's different for everybody, because eating disorders, I don't think it's the same for everybody. I mean, I think there's this idea that it's, you know, it's this or it's that. But I don't think
I think everybody's a little bit different. I mean, honestly, it's you see patterns that are similar, absolutely. Right. But it is really like any sort of mental health issue, honestly, right? You see patterns, but everyone's an individual, and everyone experiences it in their unique way.
Yeah. I remember for me, I couldn't even say the B word. It was like, I would not say the B word. It's like, that doesn't exist. It doesn't exist for me. So it was like, that's not me. I'm not going to say that word. Like it was
completely ignore its existence.
Oh, yeah. It was just weird. And the more makeup I put on, the harder I worked out, I'm good. So it was just so awful. But
it sounds like you've come a long way.
Well, it's like popping a boil. I know this is really gross to talk about on like a live chat show, but it's like, I remember the feeling of like, oh, it was so awful to bring up. It was like, it got more and more pressure, and then finally it exploded and it like got popped. And then all this awful stuff comes out. And then you're just like, oh,
relief.
Relief, and it can heal. And it's crazy. So yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think people are just really, you know, I really try to also encourage people, especially right now, just to really be easy on themselves. Don't be so hard on. It makes sense that we're struggling. It makes sense that people are having a rough time right now. I think when like the COVID isolation sort of first started, I think, at least personally, I kind of thought, oh, this is temporary, right? I can handle this for a little while. And then now we're sort of
on.
Right. And now there's really no end in sight, right? There's really 6 or more months in, and there's no end in sight. And it looks like we might continue this long term, which takes me back to my don't socially isolate, physically isolate, and socially connect. You know, it's really important, you know, have a conversation with your neighbors across the street from porch to porch, you know, and, you know, talk to strangers across the, you know, the outdoor seating area at the coffee shop. And we had a dinner with family friends for the first time in almost, you know, I guess it's been 8 months. We found a restaurant that had like 10 feet tables outside.
Oh, I love that.
They sat on one end and we sat on the other.
Oh, that's so
We had this dinner together. It was so lovely. And we realized how much we missed that.
I love that.
Yeah. So, you know, you're going to be creative, right?
Yeah. No, I know. I've done some creative stuff, and it's really special when you see that. I've seen apartment buildings singing and like on their balconies, and it's special.
Gives me goosebumps. That's great.
Do you have one tip? I heard you have a tool, something about 5 senses, and I would love for you to give people a tip. Can you give people a tip about something they can walk away with today?
Sure. I have, there's a 5 senses grounding exercise that I really like. There's a couple different ways that you can do it, but it is really helpful if you're feeling anxious. So you can do it anywhere you are. If you're sitting, I have you put 2 feet on the ground. If you're standing, just try to put equal weight on both feet and just take a good deep breath in. And you're just going to connect to your senses. So nice breath in and out. And you closed your eyes, that's perfect. So you can just open your eyes softly and see one thing. And just name that thing in your mind. And then tune into your ears, so your sense of hearing, and hear one thing. Right. And then use your sense of touch and tune into that sense of touch one place in your body. And then tune into your sense of smell. See if you can identify one thing that you can smell. And then gently open your eyes further. And our final sense is the sense of taste. So I'm always carrying a water bottle, or I have a cup of water somewhere. So the water is perfect. So what that does is while you're doing that, you're just breathing and you're connecting to your body. You're grounding in your body. So anxiety tends to make us feel very ungrounded and uncentered. And what this does is it brings us back to our body, to our physical self, and to our center by focusing on the breath and focusing on the five senses. I have actually utilized this very recently with a patient. We were having a telemedicine visit, and she just started spinning, right? Mm-hmm. So her brain, she was starting to worry about what I was saying, and she said, I'm having a panic, let's do this. And we did the five senses, and I went even slower than we just went right now. And she'd never done that before, and we finished, and I said, okay, tune in with your body. How are you doing? And she said, I feel fine. And she was shocked. It's really powerful to just take a minute and focus and ground yourself.
I felt present when I did that, which is, I think we get so in our heads, and that made me feel really present.
Exactly.
Yeah. I love that. So I want to let people know, if you're struggling with an eating disorder, whether it's secretly or openly or any way, and you this is not something to play with. I mean, I can say that out of experience.
Yes.
Our doctors see people through telemedicine. Dr. Brush is one of our physicians at Amen Clinics. I know you're seeing people through telemedicine, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And the number you can find her at is 844-818-0616. And you can talk to one of our care providers, schedule an appointment. You can also take one of our brain health assessment. If you go to tanaamen.com, you'll find all kinds of tools there, including the brain health assessment, which can really help you. And I know, Dr. Brush, you are also, I mean, obviously you're a naturopath. You are just well-versed in, if people don't want to take medicine, they can take all kinds of supplements to help.
I have a big toolbox. I love it. Yeah. Right. We have options of medication. We have options of supplement. And of course, therapy, nutrition, all of the good biochemical balance, all of that stuff comes to play.
I love that. So you really are looking at those four circles.
Yes, absolutely.
I love that. So thank you so much for being with us. And I just want to tell people, please, if this has been helpful to you at all, or you know someone struggling, share this video with a friend or tag 3 friends. And it will enter you into a drawing to win our 6-month Brain Warriors Way online course, which is a $395 value. It's where my husband and I walk you through for 6 months. It's 6 months of classes in a course to help literally radically transform your life. So we want you to become a brain warrior. Don't miss next week's show. I've got someone very special on at 3 o'clock on Wednesday. And I want to just say thank you again, Dr. Brush, for joining me. And I know this is very valuable to so many people.
Thank you so much. It's been really nice to be